Hello and welcome to Retro Reviews, my channel where I review my favorite retro video games of all time as well as some modern releases I have recently finished. First and foremost, it was so exciting for me, nice early Christmas present, to have my last video talking about Switch 2 leaks go from about 100 views yesterday to overnight hitting about 700 views, and then steadily climbing to 8, 9, and all the way up to, at the time of this recording, nearly 1,400 views, and getting approximately like 15 or 16 new subscribers, bumping me over that 700 mark. Thank you so much. That means a ton to me. To have a video get 1,400 views in under 2 days on a channel of my size is a huge deal. I think my most popular video is something like 2,600 views. So to have something like that happen so fast, getting about half that views in 2 days, is just so special. So thank you so much. If you're new to the channel, welcome. I do lots of new videos. It used to be daily. Now I'm a little bit spottier, but I'm trying to get back onto that daily grind. Just making videos when I feel like it, when news comes out and games I need to review. But I make videos all the time. I talk about news. I talk about games. I just like to sit here and talk to you, and I really appreciate it. If you're not part of the family yet, please click that subscribe button. I'd love to get to 750 by the end of the year. My original goal was 1,000 when I was getting a lot of growth, but then it slowed down. So 750 would make me really smile. So if you want to make me smile even more, 750 by the end of the year, you'd make my day. And if you haven't seen that Switch 2 video, go check it out. I think it's pretty darn good. I use lots of video evidence of what we could expect to see from the Switch 2. But with that out of the way, I want to talk about something that I've been interested in talking about for a while, and that is it has to do with the current generation and our problem with innovation. Why I haven't seen a whole lot of innovation in the space lately. And I have a theory as to why. Now, I love video games. Some of my favorite video games include games that are just heavily realistic, that are really gritty, and like The Last of Us style games where you like really photorealistic, tons of great like movement, like very realistic everything about the game. The graphical fidelity is part of the reason I love it so much. It just brings together something really special for me. But graphics aren't usually my biggest thing. Frame rates aren't usually my biggest thing. I love gameplay overall. That's usually my biggest crux. If a game is fun to play, then I love it. And I loved what games used to be. I think games for a long time were very innovative due to hardware limitations specifically. If you look back at stuff like Silent Hill 2 on the PlayStation 2, there were a lot of limitations that they had to work around, and in so doing they created a really atmospheric, beautifully atmospheric thing with the fog effect, because they didn't have an ability to like mask draw distance. They had a hard time with draw distance specifically. They masked it with the fog, and that became like a pivotal feature of the game. It created a lot of ambiance, and it's just a beautiful thing. Stuff like that is so brilliant. I love how like hardware limitations tend to bring innovation to the forefront. Even looking at a game like The Last of Us, like I mentioned earlier, that was at the end of the PlayStation 3's life cycle. They were pushing the PlayStation 3 to its graphical limits, and they were really pumping out something that was groundbreaking and new, and they did their very best, and they pumped out something that I consider to be a masterpiece. And they did it on hardware limitations. They did the best of their ability, they pushed it to the very edge, and they came out with something really fantastic. But now I've seen a little bit of a trend here. Between the PlayStation 4 and the PlayStation 5, we haven't seen a huge leap in graphical fidelity or frame rates, for that matter. Anything like we saw back with like the Nintendo 64 to the GameCube, or the PlayStation 1 to the PlayStation 2. We haven't seen a jump like that in a very long time, because of the PlayStation 4 and then the PlayStation 4 Pro era, Xbox One X, gosh, hate that naming convention. We saw it right there. We hit kind of a pinnacle of graphical fidelity, in my opinion. And I'm not saying that the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X don't have much better looking games. You can see a difference. There is a marked difference there, but it's not so drastic anymore. And I feel like there is a huge emphasis on, let's make games like 60 FPS and 4K resolution. Let's get them as good looking as possible, as photorealistic as possible. How do we make sure that every eyebrow looks exactly like a real human's eyebrow? And I feel like we're missing the point here. I feel like this is driving the conversation in the wrong direction for games. I really miss the times when we had games like not focusing so much on graphics, or if they did, they were just doing their very best with what the hardware had to offer, and then making a really solid game underneath it. If you go back and play something like Ocarina of Time, it was gorgeous for the time when it came out. It's not the best looking game now by any stretch of the imagination, or even the best looking game on the Nintendo 64. They did their very best with it, and then built a really phenomenal game underneath that. And I think that we're doing kind of the opposite now. I see lots of games that are really, really gorgeous, really phenomenal, like in terms of their draw distance. They have these lush backgrounds and backdrops and everything. The characters have like really fantastic like facial movements and everything. And the game's just not that fun. They spend all this money with these giant inflated budgets for games, and they're spending all this money on doing all this extraneous stuff, let's be honest here, and then neglecting the rest of it. And it really shows. It seems like this generation we have had a lack of really big hitters, not a lot of exclusives across the board. We're just kind of doing a bunch of just safe stuff. There's nothing wrong with a good game. I'm a champion of the 7 out of 10 games. I think they're really fantastic, and having an experience like that is really phenomenal. But a 7 out of 10, because it's just like, it's lackluster, but it looks gorgeous, is not the same thing by any stretch of the imagination. And I feel like the newer hardware, we're spoiled by this new hardware now, that we're just focusing on the wrong stuff. And I feel like developers especially are just really focused on making a game look really, really shiny and fresh and new to try and sell it to you, without really baking it underneath at all. And we see it time and time again. We see these projects come out and they are not fully baked. They don't really hit the right notes for consumers, and then they bomb after a while, and then they go the way of the dodo, and suddenly they've lost out on $100 million, and they can't. These executives are scratching their heads trying to figure out what the heck's going on, and really it's just because they're not making good games anymore. They're making shiny turds, and that's just not what we want to see anymore. And I blame it on this high graphical fidelity here. I feel like now that we have the technology to make games as pretty as we want them to be, the focus is on realism and not so much on making a game fun. Now, Nintendo, on the other hand, has been doing their own thing for a very long time. They have never really pushed the forefront of graphics. They've never really done that. Nintendo 64, I think, was their biggest push with their their processor and everything. They were saying that like we're the really powerhouse here. But then the PlayStation 1 came out and really just usurped that with CDs and everything. So I think they've really just taken their own way, their own path, because they know that they can make the games to back it up. They don't have to be the most powerful console out there because they're going to make the games that you want to play. And they have succeeded in that. The Nintendo Switch era has really showed that they don't need a high-powered device to be one of the best-selling consoles of all time. It's likely going to be the best-selling console of all time, at the minimum top 3 now. It's just showing us that Nintendo really cares about making a good product. Now, there are some pitfalls with the Nintendo Switch for sure. Playing through Tears of the Kingdom, you can tell that there are some slowdowns every now and again. It's like a 90 to 95% smooth experience start to finish, but that 5 to 10% really is very noticeable. Does that stop me from loving Tears of the Kingdom? Absolutely not. In fact, I'll probably play it again on the Switch too. Hopefully it'll have some up resolution and they'll be able to like run really smoothly across the board, and I'll have a really great time doing that. Or if they remaster it down the line, whatever they want to end up doing there. But Nintendo just knows how to make games that people want to play and that like really stand the test of time because they're not focusing on the graphical fidelity. Tears of the Kingdom looks arguably about the same as Breath of the Wild. They're not too far from each other, even though one came out at the beginning of the console's lifespan and the one came out near the end of it. But they made 2 distinct games that have 2 completely different gimmicks, despite sharing visuals and a world that feel very distinct from each other, and they're both really phenomenal to play. And I just love playing Nintendo games because I know that they're going to come out with something pretty high quality 95% of the time. If you look at Mario Odyssey, it's one of the best 3D platformers ever made, and it came out in 2017 on the Switch. It's just absolutely gorgeous. They optimize their hardware to the best of their ability. They know that they have an underpowered system, and so let's do the best with what we can. Even cooler is when other developers, third parties, will port their games that are clearly very demanding on like the PlayStation 4, and they'll port them over to the Nintendo Switch, and some of them can do it really, really well. From everything I've heard, because I haven't played it on the Switch, The Witcher 3 runs very well on the Nintendo Switch. Doom 2016 is really fun on the Switch. despite having to downgrade the visuals pretty heavily, they keep a steady frame rate across the board. They know how to optimize it for that console. They did a really good job. So kudos to those third parties that know what they're doing to work on an underpowered console. And having that portability is just so fantastic. And that's obviously the reason that third parties want to get on the Nintendo Switch. A lot of people are saying that the Switch 2, a lot of insiders are saying the Switch 2 is going to be a very powerful console. They'll be able to handle AAA games, and that'll be a really good selling point for the future for third parties. Third parties wanted to work with the Nintendo Switch as it is, even though it is underpowered. They're going to want to work with the Nintendo Switch 2 even more because it has more high-powered guts in it, for sure. That's at least what everyone is saying here. My point here is that this innovation is kind of been lost, and I feel like the more we get focused on high frame rates and the best gorgeous visuals we can possibly get, the further away we get from innovation and truly like good game design. I feel like the more I see from AAA studios, the more I'm just a little disillusioned by what they're pumping out. I'm more interested in indie titles. It seems like indie is at the forefront of innovation right now, and I think it has been for a while because indie developers are working with what they have. They have a small budget, they've got small teams, and they're doing their very best with what they have. All the resources they have are going into this project, and they're making it to the best of their ability. And they know if it doesn't play well, it doesn't have the budget, it doesn't have the marketing budget to get out there and say, hey, this is our game. They're working the best they can, so when they launch their game and it's fantastic and people champion it and spread word of mouth like on YouTube and stuff and user reviews, they know that their product is going to succeed. Some of my favorite games as of late that I can think of, like off the top of my head, I loved Death's Door. It was like a Souls-like top-down action adventure game. Super fun, so fantastic. If you look at like Undertale, if you look at Stardew Valley, these phenomenal games that like clearly take inspiration from other sources, but you can tell that a lot of passion went into it, and they put as much work as they could into making the gameplay fun, and they brought out a really phenomenal product. A lot of people love Hollow Knight and are so excited for Silksong and keep waiting for a Silksong announcement because of how gorgeous Hollow Knight ended up being. Indie games are still the champions of innovation right now because they don't have those huge budgets. And I think these big budgets, I think these high-powered consoles are really hamstringing innovation right now. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. Let me know in the comment section down below what you think. Let me know some of your favorite innovative games right now. If you can think of any developers, indie, AAA, AA, whatever, across the board, whatever it is, let me know what you think is the most innovative game right now. I would love some suggestions because I'd love to go and check out some, especially ones that have come out as of late, so I can at least see that somewhere we have some innovators in the scene. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.